now that I'm at this point in my equation, what I like to do when I have a fraction is cross multiply. I'm going to multiply the 2x times the 1. Now I'm going to multiply the 5 times the 16. 2x times 1 is 2x. And 5 times 16 is 80. Now what do I do? Got to get x by itself. So what do? This means 2 times x, so I've got to use the inverse of multiplication. What's the inverse of multiplication? Division. So I'm going to divide this side by 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1, and 1 times x is x. But what I do to one side, I have to do to the other, so I'm going to divide this side by 2. 80 divided by 2 is half of 80. What's half of 80? 40. That's my answer. Okay, what's the first step in solving radical equations? Remember, the first step is to isolate the radical. We've got to isolate the radical. That means we've got to get this radical all by itself on one side of the equal sign. Right now it's not by itself because there's a 3 right next to it. How am I going to get rid of this 3? How am I going to get rid of this 3? Well, this means since it's right next to the radical, it means multiplication. So this is 3 times radical x. So, and what's the inverse of multiplication? What's the opposite operation? Division. So I'm going to divide by 3. What's 3 divided by 3? 1. And what's 1 times radical x? Radical x. But what I do to one side, I have to do to the other to keep the equation equal. So I'm going to divide this side by 3. What's the next step? Once I isolate the radical, the next step is square. I square. So this 2 is going to apply to this x squared. And since hopefully you're starting to get the hang of it, I could start skipping steps. This 2 is going to apply to this x squared. That's going to give me radical x squared. And the square root of x squared is x. So I'm just going to write x here. And this 2 is going to apply to both of these numbers, the numerator and the denominator. So what's 2 squared? 4. What's 3 squared? 9. So my answer to x is 4 over 9. Here I've got another problem very similar. What's my first step? I've got to isolate the radical, right? Is the radical isolated right now? Is it by itself? No, it's not. There's a 4 next to it. We've got this 4 here. We need to get rid of that 4. Well, I told you earlier that when you have the number right next to the radical, that means multiplication. That's 4 times the square root of x, or 4 times radical x. So since the operation being done here is multiplication, to get rid of this 4, we're going to use the opposite, or the inverse, which is division. So we're going to divide by 4. 4 divided by 4 equals 1, and 1 times radical x equals radical x. What I do to one side, I have to do to the other, so I'm going to divide this side by what? 4. That equals 8 divided by 4 equals what? 2. Okay. So now I'm going to square. Once I get my radical isolated, that's the next step. I square. So x squared is x. The square root of x squared is x. And 2 squared is 4. X equals 4. Y'all say? Alright, let's do this problem now. Remember, we've got to have the radical isolated, or we've got to have it by itself. Right now it's not isolated. Why is it not isolated? Because there's what number next to it? What number is that? 3, right? So we've got to get rid of the 3. By now we should know that when there's a number right next to the radical, that means multiplication. So to get rid of this 3, we're going to use the inverse operation, which is division. So we're going to divide by 3. 3 divided by 3 equals 1. 1 times radical 2x is radical 2x. But what I do to one side, I have to do to the other, so I'm going to divide this side by 3. 12 divided by 3 equals 4. What's the next step? Come on, you should be able to answer this question by now. What's the next step? You square both sides. That's what the next step is. You square both sides. Well, 2 squared and x squared, the square root of 2 squared x squared is 2x. You notice I'm skipping the steps now because you should already know what we're doing, right? So we get 2x, and 4 squared is 16. Now I've got to get x by itself, so what am I going to do? What's this operation being done here? Is it addition, subtraction, multiplication, or division? What is it? What does this mean? The 2 right next to the x. It means times, right? 2 times x. So what's the inverse of times? Division. So to get rid of the 2 and get x by itself, I'm going to use the inverse operation of times, which is division. So I'm going to divide by 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1, and 1 times x is x. But what I do to one side, I have to do to the other, so I'm going to divide this side by 2. Gives me 8. 16 divided by 2 is 8. If you don't believe me, plug it into your calculator. Okay, what's the first step? We've got to isolate the radical, right? We've got to isolate this radical. Well, what number do we've got to get rid of so that this radical is by itself? We want this by itself. What number do we have to get rid of? Got to get rid of the 2, right? But what I do to one side, I have to do to the other, so I'm going to divide this side by 2 also. What I get is 10 divided by 2 equals 5. Okay, once I isolate the radical, what's the next step? You should be able to tell me. What's the next step? Give you a hint. Square both sides. This square is going to allow me to just get rid of my radical. So what I'm going to have is 4x minus 3 equals 5 squared. What's 5 squared? What's 5 squared? 25. Now what do I do? Well, before I get rid of the 4, I want to get rid of this negative 3. And it's a negative, so I use the inverse operation, which is positive. Negative 3, positive 3 equals 0. But what I do to one side, I've got to do to the other. So I'm going to add 3 to this side. So that's going to give me 4x equals 28. Now, I've got to get rid of the 4 because I want x by itself. Right? So what's this mean? This means 4 times x. So what's the opposite of multiplication? Division. So I'm going to divide by 4 to get rid of the 4. That gives me 1. 1 times x is x. What I do to one side, I have to do to the other, so I divide this side by 4. And 28 divided by 4 is 7. That's your answer.